I was going to the Church of Bedside Baptist this morning, and in our house we happened to have an online church service going. And I happened to be struck by the prayer of invocation, and I just caught the words, and it actually blew me away. Oh, and by the way, don't tell me I had to leave the service early, the online service, and go and find that prayer and write down that prayer and reflect on it a little bit. So don't tell on me that I left early. I think the problem with maybe the contemporary church, one of the problems is that it's shallow. A lot of beautiful music, but lousy theological lyrics in some of the songs. And maybe the problem with traditional worship or liturgy is that it's too deep and too fast, or simply too fast. Because I heard this prayer of invocation and it so struck me, but we didn't have time to linger in it and really even think about what we were praying or saying. And it's so rich and deep. And then the problem with church and contemporary worship in general is that I think people feel hungry for more or something different, or it's not working for them so much as they need. But anyways, another discussion. Here's the prayer. I'd like to read it for you and then make some comments on it. To me, it's an every moment invocation, an everyday invocation, if I could live into it. God, and I think it comes from the Book of Common Prayer, but there was an ending to this prayer I hadn't heard before. And again, today it struck me in a way it hasn't before, which I think is God's Spirit and love whispering into our ears constantly if we have ears to hear. God of glory, power, and love, deliver us as we draw near to you today. Rescue us from our coldness of heart and wanderings of mind, that we may listen to your word of love, believe it, receive it deeply into our hearts, and allow it to transform us. May the good fruit of your love be evident in our lives, that others may come to know you and rejoice in your embrace. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. There's too much in here to even reflect upon, but here it goes real quick. God of glory, power, and love, deliver us. Deliver us from what? Maybe from ourselves, and from our ego, and our constantly thinking about ourselves, to turn our minds to you. Rescue us, not from sin, not from death, not from devil, but from each day's cares and concerns. Rescue us from coldness of heart. Doesn't that go back to the beginning of our first love and that warmth of love that we have from God, and that we love God back with that warmth of heart? But my heart gets so cold. And deliver me from wanderings of mind. There it is. That we are much too tolerant of mind wandering and letting our mind go to all our negative thoughts and thinking that make us miserable, unhappy, and sick physically and spiritually and emotionally. That we may listen to your word of love. There's the gospel. The word of love put on flesh in Jesus to show us what God is really like. This God of love. And believe it, beloved it, and receive it deeply. We can receive God's love shallowly, but to bring it deep into our hearts and minds with deep reflection and deep remembrance constantly, And allow it. It will allow it to transform us. What transforms? God's love transforms as we know it deeply and receive it deeply. Transforming love. And may the good fruit, what's the fruit of God's love in us? The good fruit of your love becomes evident in our lives. The only thing that matters, Galatians says, is faith expressing through love. So as we know God's love, that love grows in us and becomes evident in our lives and exudes and expresses out of our lives. that others may come to know and rejoice in your embrace. We are embraced by God, whether we know it or not, or even acknowledge God or not, that underneath, Deuteronomy says, are the everlasting arms of God, of love, of mercy, of compassion, of grace, of forgiveness. We swim in a sea of God and God's love. To know and rejoice in your embrace. So this prayer is rich. And as we draw near to God in our minds and hearts, always, constantly, moment by moment, remembering God, reminding. Is that the spiritual discipline, a spiritual habit, to be reminded? As we draw near to God, God draws near to us. Not that we've ever been separated from God, but our awareness of God's nearness and presence grows more and more, and we're glad for it, and we're happy in it, and it's all good. So I love this prayer, a beautiful prayer. The church service just went too fast. This was my sermon. You know how we go to church and we just catch a phrase or a song or a word from the sermon, from the hymn or whatever. Man, I caught it in this prayer of invocation today. I couldn't get any further, and it's just what I needed to revitalize my faith and my soul a little bit today. So blah, blah, blah. There it is. Take what's helpful, leave the rest. And until next time, may you live all the days of your life.